Today we've got a crazy story of an entitled parent who tried to take their kid's car away and then blame their partner when the kid pushed them out of their life. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, I think I just might lose my mind. Whenever I get irritated or upset or whatever, I take a walk or simply walk away. It's just my method of cooling off so I don't end up going insane. However, it would appear that whenever the authority, the woman that gave birth to me, is miserable or heated, I too must be miserable and heated. A perfect example of this would be last week, where I was preparing my lunch in the morning for a volunteering event I was going to later in the day. Now, the woman was already upset with me from the previous night before for some stupid crap I can't even remember, and it showed all over her face when she came to nag and bench at me in the kitchen. She has this habit of coming at me when I can't exactly leave. Almost all of our arguments take place in the car, where I have nowhere else to go. This time, however, I decided to just silently walk into my room and play on my phone until she finished her business in the kitchen. Unsurprisingly, she almost immediately followed me into my room to interrogate me on what I was doing in my own goddamn room. Well, I was waiting for her to get the heck out of the kitchen so I could make a sandwich in peace, but of course I didn't tell her that. I just said I was playing on my phone. Of course, she forces me back into the kitchen on the premise of finishing making my lunch. And of course, she forces me into an argument which only continues to deteriorate into needless noise and conflict. Things like, "What have you ever done for me? I do so much for you and all I get back is attitude." It took me a while to come up with a response to this until I finally thought of, what haven't I done for you? For context, I'm essentially just a regular teenager. I do my chores and I make decent grades, doing just about everything that's expected of someone still under their parents' custody. Yeah, I can be rude and disrespectful, but the really funny thing is it's only been a problem with her. She's the only one who gets that side out of me out of all of my friends and all my teachers. Her idea of rude and disrespectful is me wanting to stay in my room all day to avoid her and other stupid crap like that. Not saying I'm an angel or anything, but she is definitely not either. There's a law in my state where you can be involuntarily institutionalized if you act crazy, and this has to be the third or fourth time she's threatened to use that law and get me locked up in some psych ward or something. I guess me acting crazy was running out of the house barefoot and 50-degree weather was crazy, because the argument escalated so much that I started crying and told her I didn't want to go to the volunteering event anymore because I was so upset. Her response to this was locking me out of my room and telling me that I either go to the event or give up my phone and my room for the rest of the day. Fun fact, she wore my Crocs right after locking me out of my room, so I couldn't even have a pair of shoes to wear. She's so intent on taking absolutely everything away from me. I don't know how to emphasize that fact enough. She wants me to have nothing. I came back from my walk maybe 30 minutes later, unable to even feel my feet. I had keys to the house in my room, but not to the deadbolt on my door. I realized the purpose of it that day. It was just to keep me out. This silent standoff between us would continue until the evening. She had told me that I could just end it by giving up my phone, but I didn't want to let her win. Yeah, that sounds stupid, but I'd rather be stupid than give her that satisfaction. Finally, I got sick of waiting and I started hacking away at the deadbolt of my room's door with a knife, unscrewing the bolts with the tip and essentially brute forcing my way into my room. I can't tell you the dopamine rush when I finally got back into my room. I don't know why I thought this would stop her because she'll do just about anything to come back for my throat, but I pushed a dresser in front of my room door to keep her out. She just forced her way in, then pushed the dresser back in front of the door, pulled up a stool, sat down, and yeah, another argument started. I watched as she started to destroy my room, throwing all of my clothes on the floor, ripping down everything that was important to me, and telling me to pack my crap and go. Go where was my question. We moved away from all my family and friends back in summer, so I had no one to turn to. I'm completely isolated here and she knows that. The authority wants me crawling back at her feet begging for forgiveness, but I'd rather be a fool than give that to her. I'm not sorry for anything I've done. Maybe I'm wrong for that, but I couldn't care less. She's so bent on me having nothing around her, it's making me sick and I feel like I'm starting to hate her. There's never been a point where I've called the authority anything but mom. However, I called her a bench straight to her face after she started tearing the art down from my room walls. That was the only weak link in my armor, and she was heck bent on exploiting it. My dad even acknowledged that when we had a family discussion about it later that night. We don't have discussions nor conversations. He couldn't even get a goddamn word in and I couldn't stop laughing. It's just the woman venting her frustrations and an endless back and forth of I said, she said, I did this, she did that. Nothing is accomplished, and I don't ever take it seriously because I know there's no getting through to her. She won't change. I can understand that my dad is upset because I don't take it seriously and I, in his words, feed the fire, but there shouldn't even be a fire in the first place in my opinion. I think my favorite part of this day, the one I can laugh the most looking back on it, was the part where the authority threw a maybe 500-page manual straight for my head. I ducked and it hit a glass of water instead, completely shattered it. When I confronted her about it later in the family discussion with Dad, she said, and I quote, "I missed on purpose." Hearing OP's story, I kind of thought this felt like a bit of a run-of-the-mill narcissistic parent, right up until the last detail OP included, which is them actually getting physical. It's bad enough, but it's essentially one thing when they break down a door in a house they own. It's another when they're actually throwing a pretty decent projectile at their own kid. Flipside 1812 commented, "This all sounds horrendously abusive. How old are you? Is there any family you trust that you can reach out to for help? Or trusted adults at your school? I might advise making a call to CAS depending on your age as well. If you're close to 18, they will likely do nothing, but you don't deserve to live like this. If you're 18 or older, just work really hard to leave. This won't get better. You're not wrong for feeling the way you do, but you need to get out of that situation as soon as you can and never look back." OP responded commenting, "I'm 16-year-old female. I'm one of her 3 kids that are actively distancing themselves from her. My brother went all the way to Virginia, so I might join him there when I go to college. I usually think of changing my name and moving across the country, so there's definitely no way I'm going back. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of entitled parents, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below?" That said, our next story is Mom making me take out my savings to travel to her. More context below. So technically correct. Just a little bit ago, me and my mom were trying to plan how I would come see her, as where I am is 10 hours away in a different state, and she suggested I take some money out of my savings for gas and do the drive and she'll pay me back. So guess what I did? Put the savings into my checking, never mind the fact that I only have $300 to my name and only had $96 in checking and the rest was in savings, so I had to spend $250 on gas. I'm putting this in entitled parents because of the stuff she kept saying. I don't remember all of it specifically, but she brought up, "Well, we drove 9 hours to your graduation, high school, so you can make this," dismissing me whenever I said something, even though she asked, and especially when I kept saying I don't have the money to go shopping or do anything because I'm trying to save to pay my car insurance in January. $600. And she said, "I had it tough too, it's a part of growing up." And I told her, "Hey, please don't try to minimize my situation," after which she blew up on me and telling me that she only had $200 when I was born, and how she worked hard and that I'm not the only one who's struggling. I just said, "I never said I was, and yes, your situation was worse, but that doesn't mean I'm not having a tough time right now." She said verbatim what I had said. "No, you were minimizing my experience." And I said, "No, I was trying to explain mine and you overshadowed me." And she says, "That I did." Then it was a bit quiet. Then she started explaining what road to take, etc. And then the love bombing after, saying how much she loves me and she's so proud of me, etc. Ew. I don't know, I just wanted to rant because, I don't know, I feel crazy and she wants me to leave first thing in the morning too, so I'm trying to busy myself packing. Also, I don't live with her or my dad, divorced, anymore. I lived with my friend's family, and they have relatives over, so there's no room for me. If I didn't go to my mom's, I would be sleeping in my car for a month. That's how long the college dorms close for during break, and it's $300 extra to stay during. Edit, I said before, she's paying me back for the gas money, which should be the full $250, and she also said that she's giving me a bit more just in case. My main issue with her is that she thinks of only herself when talking about me, and frequently tries to struggle more than me and make me feel like crap. And no, I'm not willingly going along with this. It's either I stay here or sleep in my car for a month. And if I paid $300 to the dorms, I wouldn't get paid back. But my mother is paying me back for gas money. And I am getting better in saying no and expressing myself. I was sticking up for myself during the call, even though I was upset. To say that I'm just letting this happen to me is not true. I just have to in this instance. I can't imagine there's too many people out there that enjoy somebody who's a one-upper. You talk about something that you're struggling with, and the other person replies with some crazy story that's an attempt to strong-arm you and leave you with this impression that, oh, well, I guess when I'm talking to this person, I can't be talking about my struggles, or I have no room to be in any kind of emotional downswing because of my current circumstances because this person had it so much harder at one point in the past. I get OP going out there and staying there because it's just better for them situationally than staying in the car. I think the biggest thing here that points out why OP would never want to come back again is the fact that they're argumentative when you point out that they are one-upping. I mean, I'm the kind of person who would not suffer fools gladly for a minute who don't have that introspective quality to realize they are minimizing other people's experiences. Like, at the least, I'd be happy if it took an extra moment or two or an extra explanation or two for them to realize, oh yeah, I am doing that, I'm sorry. McTouches commented, don't bother to go to see her. Tell her that if she wants to see you, she needs to send you the money to pay to get there because you won't jeopardize your ability to pay your bills for her. Her financial situation when you were a baby is irrelevant. It's her financial situation in relation to yours currently that matters. When my kids were in their 20s, we frequently paid for all or part of their travel to get home for holidays, once for the oldest son to come home from Japan. It's what parents do. Your mother seems to be stuck at the age of, it's your job to make me feel better, and I have no responsibility to you age. Our next story is telling toxic parents I'll be spending Christmas Eve with boyfriend's family. I've posted on here a bit before explaining my situation with my boyfriend and my parents, but long story short, they hate him and refuse to accept any part of opening up to our relationship. In the process of low contact and moving out of their house, so I'm just trying to roll with the punches while I'm living with them. Today, I accepted my boyfriend's family's invite to their Christmas Eve party. I 100% want to go and I'm excited to spend time with them since they make me feel so welcome and happy. But I know my parents will go ballistic. I've not spent a holiday with a significant other ever in my lifetime. A few have invited me in the past, which I rejected, said I'm not able to because of family. Others have had similar experiences with their families, and we agreed it's easier to go alone and maybe revisit it if we got engaged. So, not only is this a first, it's also with someone they absolutely despise. I also know me not being at my family Christmas Eve will bring up questions and force my parents to talk about my boyfriend, unless they lie. I'm planning to spend actual Christmas with my family, but we do celebrate the day before as well, so I know they'll make a big deal out of it. I'm already mentally preparing for the storm that's going to come out of this, but any advice on how to prepare for this will be so helpful. And I know I'm an adult and realistically I can do these things without feeling scared or guilty, but this thread has helped me so much with my confidence and reassurance that I'm okay to do these things and not a terrible person. Pretty much after the holidays, I'm also trying to move out ASAP once the right listing comes. I've said this before, but I would rather not have everything blow up more than it has with my parents. I know that the chances of this ending with a calm and respectful conversation is slim to none. I seem to be reaching the top of the hill and will need all the strength and support as I get to the top and reach a point where I live alone, set boundaries, and can breathe. I'm trying to come up with a game plan for all of this, but it's also new to me. As somebody who has people-pleaser tendencies kind of built into my DNA, I completely sympathize with OP's concept of choosing to do things for me or living life the way I want to seems inherently wrong and as if I'm hurting somebody else. Especially parents who have these expectations that you're going to show up to their parties or do things their way or their expectations. Maleficent Ends Curse commented, "You didn't state your age. I'm guessing you're in your early 20s and you're an adult, so it doesn't matter what your parents say. Just ignore them and go have fun with your boyfriend's family and your boyfriend at their house for the holiday. If they go ballistic and make a stupid stink out of it, just ignore them until you're finally able to move out and go hopefully permanent no contact, or at very least, very low contact for a year or more. OP responded saying, "I'm 24. The whole living situation is really what makes this difficult. I can put my foot down, but the day-to-day interactions are so painful when they're upset. I barely come home or never leave my room when it happens." This next story is, "Mother constantly has a go at me for doing things alone. Is she right or not? I'm 29 years old and still live at home. It lets me save a lot of money and do other things like traveling, etc., so I can't complain. I started a bit late in life working, but since I started making my own money and have been able to do more things, I'm convinced I've started to enjoy my life a small bit more. I have a long way to go, of course, and have issues to deal with, of course. Anyway, I've always been a bit of a loner. I was diagnosed with autism when I was a child, so I've always found it very hard to make friends. I work as a waitress, which is a very interactive job, so I can carry conversations with people a lot more than usual. But anyway, because I've never had friends, I've had to get used to doing things alone, which I'm perfectly happy with now. I'm used to it and am able to do things I know I'll enjoy. For example, earlier in the year I had the evening off from work, so decided to go to a restaurant I've always wanted to try. Loved it. Being alone didn't bother me. When I told my mother where I'd been later that evening, she had a full-on go at me. "Why would you go alone sitting like a gom? Would you not have invited someone?" Okay, maybe I should have invited someone, but I'm just happier alone. My birthday earlier this year. I was working that day, so decided to go for lunch by myself to do something nice. When I told my mom, it was the usual kind of talk. Should have invited someone, sitting alone like a gom, it's nicer to do things with people, etc., etc. I went to Rome earlier this year and absolutely loved it. Being somewhere different, I was perfectly happy alone. No one was bothering me. Looking back on the year, I think it was the happiest I was all year. So much I'm planning to go back next year. Mom didn't have a go at me for that. Everyone in my family knew I wanted to go, but she sometimes tells me to bring someone with me. It's nicer to be with people. I love going on family holidays. They don't come around often, so they're important to spend time together. Is she right or not? Am I wrong for being happy doing things alone? Personally, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong about liking or choosing to do things alone, and that's coming from a person who, with a lot of things, wants to do things mostly with people. For example, I love video games. I love concepts of video games, I love ridiculous or bad video games, but 99% of the time when it comes to video games, I find myself wanting to play games with somebody rather than by myself. That said, I know plenty of people who love playing all kinds of stuff just completely by themselves. Synthetic God 8 commented, "Some people really can't understand or empathize with other people outside themselves, and your mom is one of them. She's been trained to think doing things on your own sometimes is bad or makes you a loser. Her trauma surrounding social anxiety isn't your trauma, and she shouldn't be pushing it on you. What works for her may not work for you, and people like her can't stand that you want to live differently than how they imagine you want to live. I can't stand people who insist their way of life is the preferred way to live, and to do otherwise is madness." Our next story is, "Entitled Mother Swears at a Family of Children." Hi, I fall asleep to this sub, but then I remembered this absolute goldmine of a story that I think would be perfect for this. To set the scene, I work in multiple play schemes around my city, after-school clubs, youth club programs, and stuff like that. I basically get paid to hang out with kids and teenagers, play games with them, and teach them about life. Since I'm relatively younger than most of my colleagues, a lot of these kids view me as the older brother they never had, and often compete for my attention. I don't mind though, it's sweet seeing them and I try to distribute my attention equally. One kid who hates this the most is a young girl named Gio. Whenever I'm working, she'll run in and greet me. It is adorable every time. Although, Gio never was the best behaved and has a penchant for lying and throwing tantrums when she doesn't get her way or loses at a game. Then there was Danny, a quieter girl who was similar in age to Gio. She came from a big family, and many of her siblings were also in this club that we ran. She was always looking for friends her own age, since her older siblings would often go off on their own. The two girls got into a very heated fight that my colleague had to break up. Apparently, one was insulting the other and it caused some issues in school. Danny was sent to my colleague and I sat with Gio, who was spinning a big tale about what had just happened that went a little something like this. Gio said, OP, Danny called me the B word, so I hit her. I replied, Gio, if someone swears at you, what are you supposed to do? Gio replies, but OP. I say, Gio, no, what are you supposed to do? Gio replies, get an adult. I reply, and what didn't you do? Gio says, get an adult. I then told her to stay on an opposite end of the club to Danny and avoid her until we can sit them both down. I then did my laps of the club, played clubs with some, talked to others about school, and played video games with some others, all while keeping a close eye on Danny and Gio until the former came to sit next to me near the video games. I handed her the spare controller and spoke to her about what happened. According to her, she didn't call Gio a B word. She called her a liar for something that happened at school. Apparently, Gio had confronted Danny about ignoring her on purpose, but Danny was trying to reassure her that it wasn't intentional. When it got heated, Danny called Gio a liar and then it got physical before it got stopped. She says she was a bit shaken up, but went off to eat something. While they ate, I sat next to one of Danny's siblings, who had already stopped eating, and asked them to watch out for their little sister on the way home, since they all go a similar way. Before it was time to go, however, Danny and Gio got into another fight, which this time I stopped from happening. After hearing the she started it, no she started it, I just told both of them to go home, and Gio lived closer, so she left first. Eventually, Danny and her siblings were the only ones left, because Danny didn't want to walk there with just her siblings, and I offered to walk them to the closest bus station, which my boss was okay with. We weren't even 3 minutes away before we heard a voice cry out, "Are you the benches that were picking on my daughter?" I reply, "Excuse me?" Gio replies, "No, not OP, he isn't with them." The entitled mother says, "Tell those brats to stop picking on my little girl." I'm in shock that this grown woman was swearing at kids, one of which was the same age as her daughter. I turned around and the kids looked terrified, but I asked the oldest one if they could get their family home safely, and they nodded, pulling the kids away. Entitled mother was not happy. She said, "Hey, you can't let them leave." I said, "Miss, do not swear at children." Can't believe I had to say that. Entitled mother says, "But they swore at my baby. Clearly they know the language." I reply, "I'm not here to say who said what. I'm here to tell you not to swear at other children." She says, "Who are you to tell me that?" I reply, "I'm their caretaker as much as I am your daughter's, and I wouldn't let any random adult yell at your child. I'm not letting you do it either." Entitled mother went quiet at this point, and Gio had long since ran inside. I went back to my workplace and told my team everything that had happened, and they were shocked, save for my boss, who apparently knew Entitled Mother prior to this and didn't believe it was completely out of character, no matter how appalling it was. Danny and her siblings didn't come to the club for a long while after that, but we did eventually see them again, and they seemed in much better spirits. Let this be a lesson in basic human decency. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you, or your kids. I love that visual though of OP saying, "I wouldn't let any adult yell at this kid, so you," and I'm paraphrasing here, "shut up and stop saying that kind of stuff in front of this kid." I just love that they actually shut up. Our next story is, entitled mother tried to take her son's car away, blamed his girlfriend when he pushed her out of his life. For context, I'm 22-year-old male, the oldest son of our mother with two brothers, 18 and 13. We each have different fathers, and though I mostly lived with my paternal grandparents growing up, my brothers both lived with her. The story I'm gonna tell will be about the 18-year-old, who I'll call Jay for simplicity. Now, our relationship with our mother has been strenuous at times, and it's become ever increasingly clear she's far from a saint. When she was with Jay's father, my aforementioned grandparents took note of the fact that I vehemently refused to go back to her house after visiting them. They told me they had to physically pry me away in order to get me to go, which they had to do legally. I lived with her then. One day, I went to visit them and they noticed I had suspicious bruises on my body. Both my mother and Jay's father claimed it was from me playing rough with a dog. When they took me to a doctor to check it out, the doctor told them they could have only have been caused by physical abuse, which is what led to me living with my grandparents. I didn't remember any of this, but had it explained to me much later when I was in high school, and made a lot of sense, since when I was younger, I would frequently flinch whenever people, such as my father, raised their hands for any reason. Now, it had been years since that happened, so I didn't hold any ill will towards her for it, figuring she was just as much a victim of it, until one day she brought it up and revealed she still truly believed it was the dog. There was also her battle with alcoholism. I don't want to get into it, given it's something she's gotten fixed and I would think would be untactful to make fun of what was clearly a low point in her life. That said, I think it's important to note because it caused her to get into a lot of fights with our stepdad at the time, the father of the 13-year-old. Because I didn't live there, I only saw bits and pieces, but as you can imagine, my brothers had to live with it. With all of that said, the story this post is supposed to be about happened April, the week of the eclipse. I was visiting for the week, and my mother had Jay take her car to come pick me up. Things were going fine for the first day or so, then it happened. Jay and his girlfriend were both at work, while our mom was asleep. She worked the night shift, so I was in the living room watching YouTube or something. She came out of her room where she told me she was mad at Jay before she went back to sleep. Apparently he was supposed to refill the gas after he picked me up and he forgot to. I didn't think much of it at the time. He made a mistake. She would probably call him out on it and that would be that. Later, when Jay got back home, we went out to his girlfriend's place to watch the eclipse. Then suddenly, I got a call from my mother asking to talk to Jay. I handed the phone over. I could hear my mother screaming from across the driveway, while Jay, with the patience of a saint, tried to explain that he had made a mistake and apologized. And as if flying off the handle at him wasn't bad enough, she told him she was going to take his car away, which, he needed to get to work. Mind you, she had given him the car not long before, but even so, that's still a majorly jerk move, and illegal, I'm certain. And also, she was mad because she had to visit the gas station before work, but as far as I know, she wasn't even late to work, she was just in a rush. She made it on time, and yet she was insistent that he had somehow freaked him over. Jay, in a voice that made it clear this was far from the first time something like this had happened, told her in no uncertain terms that he was done dealing with her and was leaving. And indeed, when we got back, he immediately started packing up his things to go and live with his girlfriend, where he lives till today. While that was happening, she said that she wanted to go talk to Jay in private. I was foolishly hoping this would be her admitting to going too far and apologizing, and though I wasn't privy to the conversation, she at least had the tact to not start yelling at him again. I feel confident that that wasn't the case. Once all was said and done and Jay was out of the house, she walked into the living room on the phone with Jay's girlfriend, evidently trying to get her to let her talk to him, but she wasn't letting her, at which point she started hurling insults at the poor girl, calling her a tramp who was stealing him away from her. This grown but 40-year-old woman was yelling at a girl half her age because she wouldn't let her boyfriend's abusive mom speak to him. So fast forward to today. From how I understand, Jay still refuses to speak to her, and good for him because he's braver than me. Unfortunately, I'm too afraid of conflict to be able to take a firm stance against her. I even went with her to Thanksgiving the other week just for the sake of not rocking the boat. That said, I have distanced her otherwise. I haven't visited her other than for Thanksgiving, and I've made it a point to not speak to her unless she contacts me first. Still, I know that I'm being too easy on her for what she did. I'm hoping the next time something like this happens, because I just know it will, I'll have the balls to cut her off properly. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Once again, as a person who has people-pleasing tendencies built into my DNA, I completely sympathize with OP. When I dealt with people who I felt was similar to OP's mom in this situation, somebody who was strongly opinionated, who was very kind of just forceful in their stated expectations that other people and especially their own kids should be doing, it immediately twinges and unlocks that part of my brain that goes, ooh, I've got to do that. I've got to not disappoint this person. To do anything but is a failure and I'm going to be hung up on it. Nothing666 commented, "Hi, as someone who's cut off a mother similar to this, I can tell you rocking the boat is better than suffering. There are some days that I miss having at least a bit of a mom, but I don't miss all the terrible things she did. I miss that I don't have a mother like a mother should be. As time goes on, those days get fewer and farther between. Really, if you're firm about it, it takes almost no confrontation at all. I let my mother know why through a text and then blocked her and her husband. I also made it clear any attempts to reconnect me with her would be met with no contact to others as well. Now, my family on my mother's side lets me have updates if I want them. I no longer harbor resentments and wish for her to get the help she needs, but they know not to give updates on me and absolutely no contact info. I was scared for a really long time of making people angry, but realized maybe they aren't worth my time if they don't worry about making me upset too. Whenever or if you decide to cut contact, you got this. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy entitled parent story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.